All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the discussion about why production tracking is broken. When I say that, I mean that it's typically an extremely time-consuming and manual process that hasn't been rethought or updated in years. Many teams take the time to do this tedious task, but other teams don't. And either way, it's not an ideal process. So, quick introduction around myself here. Quick introduction of myself. My name is Brianna Williams. I'm the Senior Product Manager here at Struction Site. A little bit on my background. I did go to school specifically for construction management at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I worked as an intern at Kitchell, where I was on an OshPod project in the Central Coast of California. From there, I then went to McCarthy and was everything from a project engineer to an estimator doing self-performed concrete estimates, then an APM managing DSA projects. And then from there, I switched over to Lundlease, where I was working on a high-rise project in downtown LA as the project manager. After repeating the same mistakes on multiple floors, I then took the transition into product management, where I was working for modular prefabricator in Northern California, focusing on interior prefabrication. I've also been involved in the Construction Progress Coalition, which is a group of folks from the industry focusing on how we can collaborate better around data standards and information that's transferred on job sites. So now getting into the meat of the discussion here, production tracking is a pain in the you-know-what, and it's costing you money. I want to start with a story. So a few years back, when I was a project manager on that high-rise that I was talking about in downtown LA, I was tasked with managing all of the interior scopes. That included putting the estimates together, getting bids from trade partners, leveling those bids, executing contracts, all the way through managing work on the site. And as you know, the construction industry is still recovering from the last recession, and there's quite a gap in experienced professionals. So our team was pretty young, and it was really small. We knew it was going to be difficult to keep up with construction, knowing that we had 3 towers that we were working across. And we needed to be able to document the project because it was a residential job site, and there's always the 10-year tail with residential projects, and you have to have solid documentation for potential claims on the life of that type of project. So we did some quick math around how much time it was going to take a photo at all of the critical paths of work on the job site, and to take a photo of all 4 walls in every single room was an astronomical amount of time for the project engineers to spend collecting those photos. So in one of the industry conferences that I was attending, stumbled across the team at Struction Site back then, and we ended up implementing and using Struction Site to take all of our photos and collect them in a seamless and organized way. It saved us a ton of time and energy, and it put all of the photos in one place. I think there was about 30,000 plus images captured on that job through the life of it. The other thing that we did to help manage the project was we were looking at how we could understand the work that was in place. Being that there were 3 towers, how could we quickly understand where we were for payment applications, for billing verification, for if our critical path was not going to be met or not. And what we looked at was if we could leverage PDFs and draw a series of lines that represent the walls that were in different phases of construction. So if we were to draw a line on a floor plan and have it be red when it wasn't complete, yellow when it was partially done, and green when it was done, it would give us a way to understand the phase of construction and what was happening at any given moment. So we started the job like everyone does with these lofty goals and lofty plans to implement this status tracking of work, and quickly realized that there was no way our small team was going to be able to do this. So we defaulted to the traditional methods of walking the job every month with everyone who needed to be there for payment, application, verification. And we relied heavily on our trade partners and the collaboration with them around the state of the project and where they were blocked or where problems were arising on the job site. And thinking back, it would have been really nice to have a tool like SmartTrack to be able to guide our team with where construction maybe wasn't progressing as we expected or not. So fast forward to current day, I'm now working with a variety of trade partners, and we're focusing on production tracking and how we can collect this information in a seamless manner. And what we're finding is that this is still a very manual process done by humans, and it's probably the last thing on your list that you have to get done at the end of each week. And there are times when people are making guesstimates, or people are maybe not able to get out to the site and do their walk. And it's really difficult to rely on one person's word, especially if you don't have photos to back that up and you're just relying on one person having walked the job to tell you what is done and what's not. And the field is the one that's out actively working on the project, and the office may not be on the job site. And it's a negotiation of how much work is in place, and it's not necessarily there's no validation around exactly what's done. And then there's budget disagreements that causes biased reporting, and it's not a factual process at the moment. And for trade partners and contractors, it is critical that production is met. The schedules and budgets that are set forward when bidding the project are based on a certain output to meet our schedule or the critical path. And if we don't hit the critical path, the schedule is then impacted. And if we aren't able to build as quickly as we anticipated, our budgets are going to suffer. And specifically the trade partner, who are the ones managing the manpower on those projects. So it's critical that if you can manage the production rate, you can manage your profitability and the schedule output at the end of the day. So today's production tracking, we talked a little bit about this today. It's typically driven by the trade partners because it is the lifeline of their profitability. So the project engineer, foreman, superintendent, whoever it may be, is walking the site and visually inspecting work that's done. And they're either tracking this information, whether it be on a clipboard with a piece of paper, it could be using a mobile app where they're clicking on every single wall, or it could be a visual inspection and saying a % complete on that project. And then they're going back to the office. They're then entering that data. And once they've entered that data, they're then able to tie it to their budgets and their labor to be able to understand their productivity rates. And that's what they're using to understand if they are going to be profitable on that project or if adjustments need to be made. Production tracking is critical for your profitability on your project. Without true production rates, you're not going to have a clear indicator of whether your project is going to hit the profitability targets or not. It will also impact whether you are going to meet your critical path or be at risk for LDs or liquidated damages at the end of the day. You have to be able to know if the manpower that you've allotted is going to be able to execute the project on time, or if you need to put more manpower or adjust your crew size, who makes up that crew distribution, or if you need to send a notice to the contractor because the working conditions weren't as expected. Say there's material on the way, or you're not able to install the detail per plan. And then projects that track production accurately are able to identify and solve those problems. Like I said, you can send the request to the contractor to alleviate the problem at hand, or put the person on notice that needs to adjust it, or adjust your crew size as needed. This can protect the project's profitability. Right now, we are seeing about 10 to 30% gap in project budgets versus what the controller budget is put forward. There's about, depending on the job size, somewhere between 12 to 15 hours per week is spent tracking production instead of solving problems. I can tell you from experience, the to-do list never ends, and there are 1,000 other things that you could be doing other than walking the project and visually marking what walls are installed. There's always an RFI to write, a submittal to get across the line, a change order that needs to be submitted, whatever it may be. The people who have 20 plus years of experience are uniquely adept at solving the problems of the project and not going out and tracking production manually. So you're losing work with these inflated bids because we don't have accurate information, because our budgets are consistently off and we're spending all this time manually tracking production that's all done using the human eye and there's no factuality to it. We're not able to then have accurate bids, and we're then in theory putting an inflated percentage to those bids, making you less competitive in the market. So what if you could leverage existing work or things that have already been collected to gather critical production tracking information on your project? Right now, your job's probably collecting thousands of images throughout the life of a project. You could be collecting those images for RFIs to document changes and to submit change order requests. You could be taking images on your iPhone or whether it be 360 cameras. You're documenting to prevent claims at the end of the day. You're documenting, hopefully using Instruction Site, to be able to x-ray behind the wall. Once the drywall is installed, you still need to be able to see what was behind that wall for potential connections or to validate that materials were installed correctly and to have a time-lapse record of what was captured on a project. So if you are using Instruction Site, all of this information is already collected and organized by location with the historical time-lapse nature to it. So SmartTrack is taking all of those images, looking at what is installed in them, and then matching that up to the floor plan so that you have both a visual on your floor saying what's done, and you also have a dashboard that tells you stats on work in place and what your production is of work installed on a week-to-week or a day-to-day basis. So we're leveraging the images captured through site documentation that everyone already needs to do to tell you what work is in place or what work isn't in place. So here is an example of an active project that has been using SmartTrack over the last 6+ months. And what we're looking at is their specific floor plan. And on this floor plan, there will be a series of video walks that are captured on a weekly basis. Once those walks are then mapped to the floor plan using our algorithm, we then are able to use the location and view cone to then correctly associate the line weights with the images. So once what is identified in those images, then is status updated on the floor plan. So what we're looking at here is April 15th of 2020, and you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, you have your progress stats. So the current is telling you, as of the date that we're looking at, which is 4/15, how much work is put in place for the metal studs. You also have how much work is put in place for drywall, which is your current percentage. And then you have the same thing for ceiling drywall, ceiling studs, soffit drywall. And then you have all time, which this is the overall quantity that you have to install, which is the work remaining. And then you have your target. That's, again, the total quantities. So that is your target quantity that you're going to be installing once the project is completed. And what you're looking at visually on the floor plan, the gray lines represent planned work in place, and then the color represents where work is installed. And I'm going to slowly walk through these dates on the project, and you can see this floor plan slowly adjust with work in place. So now we're on 4/21. You can see 38% framed, 7% for drywall. We're now on the 28th, 60% framed, 13% for drywall. And as I slowly flip through these dates, you can see the progress update over time on this project. And now we are on August 6th, and we're 87% framed, 62% with drywall, and we have ceiling studs going in as well, which that layer is turned off. We're specifically looking at walls at the moment. So that gives you a quick idea of what your floor plan is going to look like over time. Now here you can see we have a floor plan with the video walk mapped to it, and you have your image opened on the side. From this view, you're able to look at a specific date captured, which right now we're looking at March 5th, and you're able to identify where work is installed. So I'm going to turn on this animation. Here you can see that the metal framing has been identified and top-down drywall or partial drywall has been identified. So it's giving you the ability to compare your photos to the color-coded work in place on the floor plan. And the benefit of this is that you can always go back and look at those images to be able to see exactly what was done or identify maybe something that you didn't catch before through looking at those images. And what we have on the left-hand side of the screen is a legend of color coding that tells you what we're going to be looking at. So as I said before, the gray is representing work that's not installed yet. The dark blue dashed is going to show you where you have top and bottom track. The solid dark blue line is where you have framing installed. It could be wood framing or metal framing. And then you have the light blue lines, which represent partial drywall or top down, and then full height drywall is the solid line. So anything that goes solid color represents completed work, and dashed represents partial work. So as I click through these images, you can see the colors on the floor plan updating, and your quantities on the side under the progress stats will also update to tell you what quantities are in place for that overall floor plan. So with the ability to track the rate at which trades are installed, you're going to be able to track and manage budgets. We all know it's critical for the project to be profitable for everyone on the job. No one's building buildings to not make money. We're all in it to have some element of profitability at the end of the day. And we need to make sure that we are tracking how much work we're installing at what rate, and is it what we had planned for, or do we need to make adjustments to our plan? And by using SmartTrack, you can understand the quantities of work put in place. You can then export that information and pair it to your budget or pair it to your labor rates to be able to understand whether you're on track or not. You can track the material installed. This is extremely beneficial for billing any of your suppliers or vendors. You can also leverage this information to supplement the payment applications that are submitted to the contractor on the project or the owner. And identifying schedule concerns. This one's beyond critical because drywall and framing always hits the critical path. It's the start of the interiors, and until the drywall is hung and finished, the rest of the interior trades cannot begin. So it's critical that the drywall and framing time is met, and that we're doing everything we can to make sure that the framing contractors are unblocked and able to install work as planned. And all of this ends up hopefully increasing our profitability. If we can meet the budget that we had put forward and build the project in the schedule that had been set forward, we can then hit our profitability. And at the end of the day, all of this is managing and mitigating risk. If you don't understand what's happening on the job site, you're not going to be able to understand if your project is on track or if your project is looking healthy at any given moment. I kind of compare this to, you go to your doctor once a year and you get a physical, and that physical tells you what you need to do to be healthy. How are we able to do the physical on our job site and understand if that project is healthy or if we need to make changes to the project to get it back on track? So now I'm going to tell a couple of stories from our customers where they've seen success using SmartTrack. So Ocean from DPR says, with site documentation and SmartTrack, you kill two birds with one stone. We capture progress over time, and then we get something out of it. That's the tracking of work put in place. DPR self-performs drywall and framing, and they've done an LCI case study where they were able to, by manually tracking work put in place and their overall productivity rates, they were able to identify problems on their projects early, make adjustments to whether it be the details or the way that something was constructed to then meet their project schedule and exceed profitability that they were expecting. So for DPR, it's critical that they're able to track production, but it's not something that can be easily done without leveraging large amounts of manpower. They already use site documentation, and so this is a win-win where they're able to simply leverage the images that are already captured to then identify work in place, which then helps them with overall productivity and making sure that they're, whether it be submitting a change request for the specific detail, or it be maybe a substitution request for the way something's installed, they're then able to be proactive about the projects and how it's being built. The next quote we have is from Brendan with Southmost Drywall. SmartTrack gives the real dollar and cents value to site doc, the value we get right away, not just a cheap insurance policy. And I've equated site documentation to an insurance policy many a times, where the more you add to it, the more money it's going to cost you because you have to spend the time to capture the photos, but the better your insurance coverage is going to be. So the more photos you take, the better your coverage, and you hope you don't have to use it, but sometimes you do. And if you do, you're always thankful that you have insurance. Now we're able to take this site documentation one step further and actually collect project analytics to tell you how your project is going. Is it on track? Are there areas of risk that we need to go identify and figure out what's happening? And Brendan said it best here with it's no longer an insurance policy. It's something that we're getting value out of right away. The last quote we have here is from Avi, who's a project scheduler at GH Phipps. So I would think that with SmartTrack, you're now able to truly collaborate with your trade partners versus just managing off flagging indicators. And traditionally, what Avi has been doing is he does monthly schedule updates. Those monthly schedule updates are where you you actualize the schedule and say what work was done, and then identify if the critical path is being impacted. This is done every 30 days. On some jobs, it's done more often. On some jobs, it's done less. But either way, doing this every 30 days doesn't give us the ability to make adjustments in real time. You're then waiting 30 days to be able to understand if you're on track or not. And so what Avi is doing with SmartTrack is he's pulling the quantities of work in place over each week, and then able to extrapolate if there are X number of days to install X quantity, what is our average rate of install that we need to hit in order to meet that overall in duration of the X days that we started with. So by pulling these quantities on a weekly basis, they're able to give real-time feedback to their trade partner around if the dates are being met or if we need to make adjustments. And in some situations, we could identify as soon as 7 days into that activity if the work is going to be installed on pace or if we need to make adjustments. And those adjustments could be as simple as there's someone else on the floor and they're blocking me being able to install at the rate I planned. It could be that we don't have the correct crew sizes or we don't have the right crew makeup. Whatever it may be, by being able to adjust in real time, we're able to make these changes. And we all know that the collaboration between a contractor and a trade partner can make or break a project. So by being able to use this information to make adjustments or have the tough conversations about what's going on a floor, we're then able to get that project back on track sooner than waiting 30 days to when you actualize the schedule and then get sent a delay notice where it's already too late and we can't adapt to what's happening on that job site. So from site walks to profits, we really want to make sure that people are able to save time. We understand how busy everyone is on a job site, and we want to help identify problem areas that you can then make decisions from to keep your project on track. The people in the industry that have years of experience are able to take these stats and make decisions that are going to directly impact the critical path or the profitability of the project. And by increasing the accuracy and the consistency in which you're able to collect this information, you're then able to take the gray area out of collecting this information. A story that we've heard in the past was, project manager said the project was 50% complete, and the superintendent said it was 20% complete. And they said, well, why don't we split the difference and call it 30%? Well, we need to be more accurate at that, and we need to understand exactly where a project is at any given moment. And by doing this in an extremely accurate way, and by leveraging images where we can go back and look at exactly what was statused, we can then have more profitable projects. And that takes work. It takes people looking at the images and looking at the stats and making adjustments to the project to make sure that we are going to hit the profitability that was planned for that specific project. So what's next? First, we focused around site documentation and answering the question of, what did the job site look like yesterday or today? And this was focusing our energy around being able to easily collect imagery on your job site in an organized fashion and as quickly as possible. It started with 360 photos. It then morphed into video walks where you're simply able to drop a start and end point, walk 20 minutes on a floor, and simply have that path generated in an automated way where you don't have to drop a point in every single room. Now we're focusing on what got done today. That's collecting from the images what work is in place, where, and what are my stats. The next question is it installed per plan? And the way we need to answer this question is by looking at other information that you have on your job, whether that be your model. It could be looking at your elevations, but we need a way to be able to marry up what is put in place with what was planned, and is it installed within the accuracy expected? And then the last question in our near-term roadmap is, am I on track and am I under budget? You have to be able to answer, is it installed per plan, to be able to truly understand if you're on track and under budget. So we're really focusing on collecting the answers for what got done today. Then we'll be looking forward to, is it installed per plan, by comparing to the model or to the elevations. And then moving on to, am I on track? Am I under budget? By tying this platform into budgets and automating the flow of transfer of information between platforms. And our goal here is to keep the project on track. By using the visual data that you've collected, you can then make better decisions faster. And we want to make sure that we're doing this in a way that isn't taking your project teams more time, but it's giving them more time back to make those decisions that they have all of the years of experience to be able to answer. So by looking at analytics, hopefully you'll be able to determine where things currently sit, if they're falling behind, and if you need to make adjustments to the work that's being installed so that we can become more profitable and more on track. So thanks for joining. Reach out if you have any additional questions. I've put my email on the slide, and hopefully this was informative. And if you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out, and have a great day.